Welcome back, everybody. Again, Sean Healy here. I have type 2 diabetes. I guess that's where we're starting each day. So today is day 3 of my 72-hour fast. I was going to record some of this stuff a little bit later in the day, but I got a crazy busy day moving stuff, and we're moving into Haley's studio, my office, my business into her studio. So we're kind of combining forces again, which is kind of exciting, but I got to spend my day doing that. So I wanted to kind of check in and let you guys know kind of what happened with the last day since I last recorded. It's been really good, actually. My blood sugars, just to give you an update on the blood sugars and weight and kind of the basic stuff, is my blood sugar actually at bedtime last night was 79, and I woke up this morning and it was 80. So that's pretty interesting from that dawn phenomenon, perspective that I've been talking about. We'll see. I think that this is kind of like I said before, why I thought this might be sort of a magic bullet is, what that's saying to me is that my insulin sensitivity from a sugar level is better when I do this. Now, does that increase, the more you fast? Clearly, if you're doing a longer fast like this one, 72 hours or longer, you're working through the sugars in your system and getting into ketosis. With that, maybe it's situational, but my gut is that it's, again, from a cellular perspective, is adapting to that, that switching into using fat for energy, which is awesome. This is why I think I can reverse this from a type 2 diabetes perspective, and that's what I'm sharing and why I'm interested in this stuff. The other thing, my weight went down just a little bit. It was 179.4 this morning, which is about a half pound less than yesterday. My suspicion with this is, there's water weight going on with this. I think I was a little bit dehydrated this morning. I went and worked out at about 5:30 or so, and it was a little, I don't want to say rough, but my energy was definitely down a little bit more and a little bit lightheaded. So I think that's just from a little bit of a dehydration perspective. So got to make sure you drink water and have salt with it, so it does what it's supposed to. I wanted to talk a little bit about ketosis, because that's sort of part of the goal with this, and switching your body into that fat burning mode versus the needing sugars all the time or feeling like it needs sugars all the time to function. So from a type 2 diabetes perspective, yeah, I think that this is really good and really important from a sugar perspective. But even from a weight loss side of things, like I had said earlier on, I think that the way we've been approaching how we look at nutrition and how we're looking at weight loss, generally speaking, is sort of backward. So anyway, I wanted to kind of cover ketosis just a little bit, and give you maybe a little bit better idea of what it looks like from a biochemistry perspective, because I was realizing that I've been talking about ketosis the last couple days and not really explaining what it is. So I want to give you a little bit better idea of what's actually happening when we get into ketosis and why it's working for us. So ketosis basically starts 2 to 3 days after you start fasting, which, because of the lower insulin, which is what happened to me, you start to produce, or stimulates what's called lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fat for energy instead of using glycogen for energy or your carbohydrate stores for energy. So if we look at this, basically you have triglycerides, which are the form of fat used for storage. And what happens is they end up breaking into what's called a glycerol backbone and then the 3 fatty acids, so they sort of separate apart. With this, what happens is the glycerol backbone is used for gluconeogenesis, which is stored in the liver, and basically, if we need to create that sugar, it's available for that. The 3 fatty acids then are generally used for kind of saved for energy for the body and protein synthesis. So what happens is the fatty acids basically are used for energy for the body, right, and the tissues of the body, but they can't be used for the brain. Okay. They don't cross that blood-brain barrier. So what happens is we produce ketone bodies, which actually can cross the blood-brain barrier. So, and the 2 primary ketone bodies are what are called beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. These actually will increase over 70-fold during fasting, depending on how far you go. So Anyway, just kind of a little overview of what's happening with that ketosis process from a kind of a biochemistry perspective. So as you can see with this, we're basically utilizing fat for energy, and because we just don't have access to sugars. Now, the one thing that comes up a lot that I've heard is, well, isn't it dangerous from a ketosis? You hear about ketosis being dangerous. What we're really looking at from a danger perspective is what's called ketoacidosis, which is the same process that we just talked about this happening, but it's happening when you have normal blood sugars, right, or higher blood sugars. So in, like, for example, type 1 diabetes, where the blood sugars are higher and this is happening, it's sort of a malfunction of what should be happening in your body. Now, that being said, I would also, I'm sort of having this kind of a pro-fasting stance a little bit with this, obviously. I think it's a good thing to do health-wise. I also obviously would say you got to talk to your doctor, particularly if you have any kind of disease process going on, like diabetes, particularly type 1 diabetes, because as your sugar comes out of your blood, if you don't adjust your medication, you could go into a hypoglycemic situation and go into coma or have major problems with stuff like that. So we want to really be careful with that. Now, type 2 diabetes, I think it's much more safe for, because we have the opposite problem. We have a hyperinsulinemia issue, right? And so what we're legitimately trying to do is create that decrease in insulin in our system. The other thing I would say is, for me, for this time, I adjusted my medication a little bit. I was taking, as I said before, I take berberine to help control my blood sugars. I got off of the metformin side of things and transitioned to a more natural way of doing it. I haven't actually taken anything for the last couple days, so, which is actually really exciting too, because my blood sugars are really right where they should be normally without taking anything. Now, my suspicion is they'll jump up a little bit as I start eating again, but my gut is, over time, if I continue to have a cycle of fasting, that'll balance back out. And that's my hope. That's the whole point of this is fasting, this process of fasting, kind of this magic bullet to maybe curing type 2 diabetes, That being said, I think that there's, if you are interested in doing this, if you have type 2 diabetes or you know someone who has type 2 diabetes, I'd say there's a couple things to kind of think about. One is there's sort of phases and levels of this. And going back to kind of where I started, I adjusted my food first, got rid of sugar and processed flour and anything that would cause my sugar levels to jump up in my system. And that worked relatively well, like I had said, and to drop my numbers pretty well. And that was in combination with metformin at the time and the drugs that I was using to help that. But like I said, I wanted my body to be able to do it, not just, have to really specifically look at food that I'm taking in, which is, again, that first kind of layer. Second layer for me was, how do I start to stimulate cell function? Healthy cell function, and again, that's sort of where both the diet from a whole foods perspective came in for me, and looking at really what kinds of food I'm eating, not just getting rid of sugar and flour, but also looking at what is the balance of carbohydrates versus fats versus proteins, and what kind of fats I'm taking in, and how much protein I'm taking in, and stuff like that. And then it kind of transitioned into this fasting thing. My recommendation, based on what I've done, and again, you can do all kinds of lengths of fasts, but I would start, if I were to give anybody advice, I would start with, kind of that 12-hour fast, with, so you're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, essentially, trying to eat dinner a little bit earlier, maybe like by 6, but not having any snacks in between, okay? Then the next step for me would be taking out breakfast. So you have lunch and you have dinner. So you're getting into, more of in a sense, kind of an 18-hour fast. And what you're doing is you're reducing your, what we might call a feeding window, right? So you're eating between, say, 12 and 6 or 2 and 8 or something like that. And if you can shorten that up even more, even better. And then transitioning into that 24-hour fast where you have dinner, go for 24 hours, and then have dinner again the next day. Do that a couple times a week, maybe 3. For myself, I think what I'm going to kind of probably settle into is doing one day a week that I have a 24-hour fast and one day a week where I do a 48-hour fast. I've gotten to the point where the 48-hour fast is really kind of not that big of a deal. If I'm being honest, the 72-hour fast is was a little bit more challenging, only because I think my energy was a little funky this morning. Right now, I'm not hungry. I've had my coffee this morning, my bulletproof coffee, and I feel pretty good. I feel just like I did yesterday, so it's not like I'm dying of hunger or anything like that. I had bone broth, which I talked about yesterday, which we have on the stove right now. So, realistically, it's more that psychology and that patterning behind, what have I been conditioned to do mentally from a food perspective? And I think that's the first step with a lot of this, is to be able to separate out the food piece of it and what's happening with your body physically from a lack of food or lack of nutrition, or at least holding out the nutrition, the fasting piece. Versus what we're just used to psychologically. So anyway, you guys, this was interesting. It was fun. I hope it helped you some. Definitely let me know if you're interested in knowing more. I think that it's really a great, a great process for people. I think there's a lot of potential with this. But yeah, I'll be back here and there, putting up stuff. Like I said, my direction with my company is really kind of that optimal living piece, and how do we become optimally healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So anyway, thanks for tagging along. If you did watch this, and definitely give me some comments. I'd love to connect with you guys if you're interested in this and know more about what's going on, and give you kind of more of my process with this. It's been almost 2.5 years of kind of transitioning through some of this stuff and figuring it out. So anyway, thanks. Look forward to seeing you again soon, and let me know how it's going. All right, thanks.